This is video 3 in my Camera Basics course, where I'm doing my best to make cameras and videography less scary for those who are new to it all. So let's get into it. SD cards, batteries, and lenses are the 3 things that you must own to have a working camera, but there are literally hundreds to choose from, so how do you pick? First of all, let's look at SD cards. I would say that there are 3 main features to look for on an SD card. The first is the storage size. So this card is 128 gigabytes, and the other one that I'm currently filming on is 256 gigabytes. Obviously, the bigger the size, the more photos and videos they can take, and they generally go up by doubles. So you can get a 32, 64, 128, so on. But if you're planning on shooting video, especially 4K, I'd recommend 128 gigabytes and above. So that's the first thing. The next thing to look at is the read and write speed, which are these 2 little numbers here. Basically, these numbers determine how fast the card works. Anything over 100 megabits per second is considered fast. But if you're shooting video, you'll ideally want read and write speeds over 200 megabytes per second. The other number to look for is this little V90 here. This again has to do with the card speed, and it means that the minimum write speed is guaranteed to be 90 megabits per second. So if you're shooting 4K, you'll ideally want a V90 card. I personally just don't think that SD cards is where you should cheap out. You know, this is where all of your precious footage is stored. So invest good money in your card because ideally you'll also have it forever. But you do need to take good care of these because they can be easily damaged if they're dropped or cracked. Some reputable SD card brands are SanDisk, ProGrade, Lexar, and Sony. The cards that I own and can vouch for are SanDisk and ProGrade. Also, every time before you shoot, you should format your SD card. Doing this wipes all the footage and all the data so you have a clean slate to shoot with. So make sure you have at least 1 copy of your work before you do this. Just realized my laptop screen was down. We can't have that, not for the aesthetic. Okay, moving on to batteries. Now, you may be tempted, as I once was, to buy cheaper batteries for your camera because you're like, it's just a battery. Don't do this. You should get the same brand batteries as your camera. If you have a Canon, get Canon batteries. If you have a Sony, get Sony batteries. Non-authentic or alternate brand batteries are often cheaper, but can mean quick draining power and charging issues. So, you'll save a few bucks now, but it will likely become a headache for you later. I'd recommend getting at least 2 batteries when you're first starting out. Later down the line, you may need batteries that are going to last you even longer. This could be because you're filming long events or presentations and you can't cut to change a battery. So for these situations, you'll need something called a V-mount battery, and they look like this. I'm not going to go into too much depth here because you'll likely not need these for a while, but it's good to know what they are and that they exist, because I always wondered for so long, what are these black boxes that I was seeing on the back of everyone's cameras? Next up, lenses. Now, this is going to be somewhat brief because once you get an idea of the kind of lens that you like, you can find literally a million in-depth video reviews for every kind of lens ever made. So the main points here to note about lenses are, number 1, the mount type. So a simple way to start your lens journey is by finding the lenses which match your camera mount type. Different camera brands have different mounting systems. I know it's really annoying, but it is what it is. So if, for example, you have a Sony camera and you buy a Sony lens, they'll connect as they both have an E-mount. This is talking about the part of the camera and the part of the lens which connect to each other. Canon, for example, have an RF mounting system, but you should always just check by Googling the mount type for your camera. Number 2, the purpose. What will you mainly be filming? What do you think? Weddings, events, interviews, nature? I'm not sure yet. That's also completely fine. I always think that a safe bet for your first lens is a zoom lens. And this literally means it's just a lens that can zoom in and out. The other type of lens that there is called a prime lens, and these are at a fixed focal length, so they cannot be zoomed. And this is why, when you're figuring out what you want to shoot or what you enjoy shooting, a zoom lens gives you some more flexibility. So say you find a zoom lens and it's listed as Tamron 24-70 f1.8, and you're going, what the f does any of that mean? Let's break it down. So Tamron is just the name of the brand. The 24-70 millimeters indicates the zoom range. So 24 millimeters is wide, meaning you can see a lot more of the landscape, whereas 70 millimeters is more zoomed in, so you'd see less of the landscape. And camera lenses can be as wide as 4 millimeters, which has that really fisheye look. They can also go up to 800 mils plus for super zoomed in shots, which is primarily used for things like nature and animal photography, where you need to obviously be further away from your subject. Now the f-stop refers to how wide the aperture of your new lens can go. So in this situation, an f-stop of 1.8 is the maximum. The lower the f-stop, the more open the aperture of your camera, meaning it lets in more light to hit the sensor of your camera. I know that's a lot of info right now, but basically if you shoot an f-stop of 1.8, your image will have that nice background blur, giving you a shallow depth of field. Whereas if you shot at f16, your image won't have any of that blur, as more of the image is now in focus. Now that's super basic, but again, for lens specifics, just look up your lens and you'll get more info than you ever need. You'll often hear people refer to lenses with a low f-stop as being fast, and these fast lenses often increase in price the lower the f-stop can go. So that's just another thing to consider. So before I mentioned how you ideally want a lens that is compatible with your camera, well, technically there are ways around this, and one way is a lens mount, which is a device that connects different mounting systems. So for example, if you wanted to mount a Canon lens onto your Sony camera, you can definitely do that. But sometimes not all of the features of that lens may be available to you, as you're not using a Canon body as well. Certain lens brands are also more expensive than others, as they use different quality glass, but don't get too caught up on this right now. My first lens was a Tamron 24-70 f1.8, this one, and I still use it on most shoots. Okay, so that's a brief overview on SD cards, batteries, and lenses. In the next video, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the recording settings that you should be using to get the best quality video out of your camera. So follow along.